here and crossed out this man who's not going to be able to join us today.
Okay. Well, hi, everybody. Great to be with you in front of our nation's capital, in the swamp. And I want to especially welcome some of my military buddies, former Secretary of the Navy Ray Mabus, Air Force Colonel Mike Turner, and Alex Cornell DeHoo. And we may have Mark Cardenas join us a little bit, but delighted to be here with our other speakers and with all of you. But just by introduction, I'm a retired Navy captain, a Vietnam veteran, last Vietnam veteran serving in the U.S. Senate, and former P-3 aircraft mission commander, and now have the opportunity, the privilege of serving as the chairman of the Environment and Public Works Committee, which I lead with Shelley Capito. We're both West Virginia kids, and so a real honor to serve with her and with others on our committee. I'm humbled staying here with our veterans behind me. We're here today because climate change is a national security issue. I'll say that again. We're here today because climate change is a national security issue. We know what's at stake if we fail to act, so it's imperative that we act. If you turn on the news, we can see that we're living through multiple crises at the same time, a threat to our national security, our pocketbooks, our health, and our future. One of these crises is driven by Vladimir Putin. Unprovoked invasion of the Ukraine. This devastating war has led to Europe's biggest refugee crisis since World War II and caused gasoline prices in this country and around the world to soar. Even with U.S. oil and gas production near record levels, Americans haven't been spared from volatile fossil fuel prices. And why is that? Because the global market determines the price of gas. Not Congress, not the president. The global market determines the price of gas at the pump. The other crisis we face today is the existential threat of climate change. We're seeing the impacts of extreme weather and drought on our food supply. We're seeing the effects on our infrastructure. And this is only going to get worse if we fail to act dramatically to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. Just last month, a study by the National Oceanographic and Atmospheric Administration highlighted the alarming rate of sea level rise due to climate change. NOAA estimates that our oceans will rise as much as a foot in the next 30 years without action. Keep in mind that roughly half the nation's population live with about 50 miles of one of our coasts. Roughly half. This is an all-hands-on-deck moment. And while the crises we face are immense, as Winston Churchill once put, I love to quote Winston Churchill. This is one I don't use a lot, but here's what Churchill said that I think is appropriate for today. A pessimist sees the difficulty in every opportunity. An optimist sees the opportunity in every difficulty. Fortunately, we can end our over-reliance on foreign fossil fuels. We can drive down harmful climate emissions. We can lower energy costs for families by investing in clean energy. In the Senate, this is our do-or-die moment to pass legislation that speeds up transition to a clean energy future and strengthens our national security. Doing so will strengthen the hand of dictators like Vladimir Putin and help us stave off the destabilization that the climate crisis will bring if it's left unchecked. It will also create millions of good-paying jobs in communities across our country. Some people say we can't have cleaner air, cleaner water, address climate change, and create jobs. That's a false choice. We can do it all, and we've proven that, demonstrated that. Now is our opportunity, to get it done. And every week that passes without action, Americans face real costs in dollars, in lives lost, and in missed opportunities. The future of our national security and our planet are at stake. President Macron, just recently reelected, said in this chamber right here behind us about 2 years ago, he said, we only have, there's no planet B. We only have one planet, and we got to take care of it. No one knows that better than my dear friend Ray Mavis, longest-serving Secretary of the Navy in the history of our country, a great friend. Before I hand over the mic to him, let me thank the Climate Action Campaign and all of you for being here today. We're not giving up the fight to get something done, but we need everyone to keep up the pressure. And with that, let me turn things over to former Mississippi Governor Ray Mavis, Secretary, the longest-serving Secretary of the Navy, Ray Mavis, and my good buddy, Ray Mavis. Ray, come on out here. Thank you, Paul.
To my friend Tom Carper and to all of you, thank you so much for being here. When Vladimir Putin invaded Ukraine, he made some gross miscalculations, and one of the biggest ones was that no one would stand against him, particularly Europe, because of their dependence on Russian oil and gas. And while it proved to be a miscalculation, it was nevertheless one of the things that caused him to go in to invade a free and democratic country. As Senator Carper said, the price of oil and gas is set worldwide. And even with American production at near record heights, it does not insulate us at all from these price spikes. And make no mistake, this price spike is Vladimir Putin's price spikes. And the reason that oil and gas spike is uncertainty and chaos. The kind of uncertainty and chaos you get when you have an invasion, when you have an unstable dictator invading a neighboring country. It's also the type of instability and chaos you have when you have massive storms that are caused by climate change, when you have the refugees and immigrants driven by climate change, when you have somebody threatening to close the Straits of Hormuz, or any other thing that causes a crisis. And that's why when I was at Navy, I've substantially moved the Navy and Marine Corps off fossil fuels as a warfighting measure. When today on our bases, 2/3 of all our energy comes from renewables, from non-fossil fuel sources. And when I left Navy, 40% at sea and in the air was from renewable, non-fossil fuel sources. The same thing has to happen nationwide, because, as Senator Carper said, if we do this, if we move into this, and those winds have gotten stronger too. There we go. We'll just, only 5 minutes and I've broken it already. Now's the time for the Senate to act on attacking climate change, to act on justice, to act on jobs, to act on saving Americans money. As long as we are dependent on fossil fuels, we will be, our economy and the pocketbooks of our families are going to be subject to the whims of dictators like Vladimir Putin. An American family should not have to worry about what the global price of oil is. They should not have to worry about whether price of gasoline is going up at the pump. And so now is the time to act. Climate change is a national security issue. Energy independence is a national security issue. And America will not be energy independent until we grow our own energy here. Renewables that are bulletproof from the whims of people like Putin, bulletproof from the worldwide spikes in oil prices, and bulletproof from any sort of manipulation. Time to act is now.
All right, folks, please remain standing. we're happy to respond to any questions you might have, and going to ask Colonel Mike Turner and Alex if to join us and respond to some of those questions. If you have a question, please feel free to raise your hand. Yes, ma'am. Tell us who you are and who you...
Sure. Mary Ann Liddell from Inside Climate News. I have one question for you, Senator. There's a lot of people saying that we need to produce more oil and gas as a national security measure. What is the possibility of an agreement that increases oil and gas production at the same time as, having energy tax credits for clean energy, et cetera? That sort of deal to just get this stuff packaged.
Yeah. Well, last time I checked, I think our production of oil is at near record levels. It's not that we're not pumping a lot up out of the ground there in terms of oil and natural gas. We still have the wind's blowing pretty hard here. The sun is shining. The wind doesn't always blow, the sun doesn't always shine. And there are other things that we can do and I think actually do in a bipartisan way to support alternatives to fossil fuel. I just mentioned a couple of those. Hydrogen, clean hydrogen. We're trying to figure out how do we move large trucks? How do we produce cement? How do we produce steel in ways that don't produce a lot of carbon emissions? How do we take some of the extra carbon out of the air and work with farmers to sequester it into the ground? Or how do we actually bury it deep into the ground? Those are all issues, frankly, that Democrats and Republicans agree on. And I see that we're very proud of the work that Shelley Capito and I and our committee, PW committee, did with others on infrastructure. But there are plenty of issues that we can agree on in I think a subsequent bill, and we ought to. Thank you. Yeah, go ahead, Ray. Sure.
Respond to you just for a second.
Please.
It doesn't matter how much we produce here in this country. It's not going to insulate us. It's not going to protect us. It's not going to protect us from our economy from these spikes. It's not going to protect the American families from doing it. So the notion that we can drill or produce our way out of this is just false.
Can I address that?
Yeah, please.
Very briefly, I'm Mike Turner. I'm the Ashburn supervisor from Loudoun County, about 40 miles northwest. We have the highest concentration of data centers on the planet. 70% of the world's email daily goes through Loudoun County, Virginia. And those data centers consume enormous amounts of electricity. And their only option right now is fossil fuel. We've introduced measures in Loudoun County, a half a dozen among others, but one of them is municipal aggregation possibilities, whereby we bring in zero carbon energy into the county. It would be the largest project in the United States. It's still in concept stage. But we would be able to provide the data centers with zero carbon energy, and they are begging for zero carbon energy. So he's absolutely right. It's a temporary solution to make more fossil fuel. We have to shift over to the alternative sources. Thank you.
Alex Cornell DeHue, I'm president of Elected Officials to Protect America, which is a coalition of lawmakers who are veterans working on the issue of national security and climate change. And I served as a state representative in Maine and a Marine Corps veteran. So the one thing about this that is really important to highlight is that clean energy is an existential threat to dictators like Putin. In the same way, the climate crisis is a threat to our planet. And the only way to prevent tyrannical leaders like Putin from getting the resources he needs to create wars in Ukraine and other conflicts from other autocratic oil-producing nations is to reduce and eliminate our dependency on fossil fuels. We are already at capacity in the United States of production of LNG. We can't shift enough capacity even from Asia to make up what Europe needs to fight Ukraine. So the only way and the fastest way to do this is the amazing thing is renewables and clean energy can do that. And it's cheaper in 2/3 of the world. So it's an obvious step that we can do to improve our national security and protect our planet.
Good. Others, please. Other questions, please. Yes, sir.
Hey, Nick Sobchak from E&E News.
Anybody but Nick. Anybody but Nick. What's that?
One of the, to piggyback off that question a little bit, one of the national security issues that have arisen out of the invasion of Ukraine is the fact that China and Russia produce a huge amount of the minerals that are needed for renewable energy. Russia, for example, big nickel producer. It seems like there's a lot of talk about that on Capitol Hill. The mining industry is very eager to make some kind of deal to spur on more domestic hard rock mining here. Do you think that could be an aspect of some kind of compromise legislation? What is the prospect for legislating on that issue?
Yeah. We're going to be voting today, tomorrow on legislation. China competes legislation, and among the issues that we will address in the context of that debate, and those the points that you just raised, we'd be foolish not to realize that the world has changed. Kind of minerals and so forth that my Tesla uses and needs to be able to provide emission-free transportation for my family and me is a lot different than a 2001 Chrysler Town & Country minivan that I just retired with 600,000 miles a couple of months ago. So it's really different, and we're a little bit behind the 8 ball, a little slow to the starting line, and we're going to catch up. And part of what we're going to part of the way we're going to do that is the legislation we're voting on today and tomorrow. Others on this, please. Please, anybody else, please? Yes, would you just identify yourself, please?
Sure. Kelly Lunny from Bloomberg Government.
Hi, Kelly.
Thanks for doing this. Speaker Pelosi and Leader Schumer reportedly met earlier this week talking about potentially putting forward legislation to cut gas prices, help consumers in the short term, potentially before the midterm elections. Is that something that you would support? Do you think it's doable anytime soon?
Yeah, there are a number of things that are Well, I'll go back to a point that was made by one of our this week. The price of gas at the pump is driven more by things outside of our border than by factors that are within our border. Sadly, we're slow to create vehicles that don't use gas or diesel. We're behind the 8 ball in terms of electric-powered vehicles, hydrogen-powered vehicles, hybrid vehicles, and we're just catching up. We have so many people who are lined up and like to buy low emission vehicles. We just don't have them to sell. But we're making up for time. One of the best ways to reduce the price of gasoline is to reduce the demand for gasoline, and to do that by the kind of vehicles that I'm driving and that literally millions of other Americans want to drive as well. So, any other thoughts or comments, please? No. I've for years, as a member of the Environment Public Works Committee, somebody's helped write a number of transportation infrastructure bills, including the one the President signed back in this last November. The roads, highways, bridges, for years, they've been, we've basically operated on the idea that those of us who use roads, highways, bridges have an obligation to help pay for them. And there's eventually we're going to go to a vehicle miles traveled approach, probably by the end of this decade. It doesn't matter if you're using gas or diesel or hydrogen or electricity. That what will determine what we pay is how much we travel. That's the ultimate solution for us, I think, as a country.
Would you support something more short term, taking these prices?
What I very, very much support of is to make sure we have in our tax code, and I hope we do this on a bipartisan basis, that we'll renew the EV tax credit, so that people are incentivized to do that. We'll provide tax incentives for people to buy hybrid vehicles, and to make sure that at the end of the day, we not only build literally hundreds of thousands of charging stations, but a whole lot of charging stations for hydrogen fuel vehicles that use hydrogen and fuel cells. Got to do both.
What about off that? What about a gas tax holiday? I know a couple of weeks ago you said you think that was a good idea.
Yeah, not enthusiastic about that. Haven't been, and don't expect to change my point of view on that. Yes, ma'am.
One more for Secretary Maven. You've worked a lot at decarbonizing the Navy, and what is the biggest challenge for the military in decarbonizing? There's so much dependence on jet fuel for every level of what happens out in the field.
That's not the challenge. The challenge was supply. When we moved our bases off fossil fuels, we saved $400 million doing that. And now that sustainable aviation fuel, sustainable marine diesel is coming on the market. It's supply, because they're very reliable and they're cheaper now.
Supply is a renewable.
Yeah. And to the previous questions, whatever we do short term, it's got to be acknowledged that it is short term. Because if we don't, 3 or 4 years from now, we'll be in exactly the same position, having exactly the same conversation. And you can move to renewables incredibly fast. It's not a decade-long thing. It's measured in a few number of years. And so if we only do short-term things, we're going to be right back here talking about exactly the same things and taking money out of people's pocketbooks the next time somebody does something like this lunatic did.
I'd say one more quick thing, please. Thank you. The technology is there, and real change I'm finding occurs at the community level. I love this job as a county supervisor. It occurs at the community level. People are begging for alternatives, and the technology is right there. Decarbonizing the military, electric and remotely piloted vehicles and unmanned aerial systems is right there. We're right at the cusp. I was at MITRE the other day. It's a huge and burgeoning industry. We just have to have the will, like a mission in the military, we have to have the will as a community to shift over to the new way of thinking. Thank you.
Let me close with this. I said that right at the top, all hands on deck. In the Navy, when we got a big challenge, big thing, this is a big challenge. There's great opportunity here as well. And as it turns out, on a path forward, there's a lot that we agree on. Carbon capture and sequestration is one. Clean hydrogen, green hydrogen is another. Next generation nuclear is another. There's plenty that we can agree on. Just like we put together a service transportation bill, water infrastructure bill. We didn't just address roads, highways, bridges, water, and so forth. We actually address climate as well, and that's a good example for us to follow as we go forward. But we don't have long. We got to get it done. We got to get it done this year. Thank you very much. All right, man.
Thank you, Senator.
Senator, it was an honor. Really enjoyed it. Thank you. Thank you, Senator.
Great.
Take good care. See you soon.
Mr. Secretary, real honor. Thank you very much. Let me give my card just because you traveled from